Well, welcome everyone to today's webinar titled AI in Treasury, the Next Evolution. This is Brian from Strategic Treasurer, and we're pleased you could join us as we discuss how AI is reshaping the future of corporate treasury. Our speakers for today are Yogs Jayaprakasam, Chief Technology and Digital Officer at Deluxe, and Craig Jeffery, Founder and Managing Partner of Strategic Treasurer. Welcome, Yogs and Craig, and I'll now turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you, Brian, and welcome everyone. So glad you could join us, spend some of your day covering this topic about AI in Treasury. AI is a big topic, and Yogs, it's good to present with you again. I think the last time we talked was a podcast, or maybe it was a webinar. I can't remember.
Thank you, Craig. Very happy to be here, and it's always fun to interact with you for this audience.
Excellent. So let's go through what our agenda is. The topic is AI in Treasury, the next evolution. And if you look at the elements on the screen, you see the box of 6 things. So we'll start with the Treasurer's role, how it has developed. We'll look at the operational and strategic interplay of those 2 items. And this will be the context for AI. So look at that from that perspective. Then we'll give you some distinction between the types, the different elements that are within artificial intelligence. So we'll give you some brief definitions of machine learning, generative AI or AI that generates, and agentic AI, AI that does or performs action, so agents. So machine learning, detecting patterns, and learning from activities all the way to doing functions. Don't look at areas of opportunity where AI can help. And so this will be from everything from reconciliation to forecasting to pattern detection where that matters for quality control or fraud. And we'll look at the work and action that AI can do. And then to buttress the list of those types of functions, we'll look at use cases. I'll ask Yogs about some of these use cases that are real world and in process. He'll step through these use cases, and that's always good to know the exact use cases, but it's also helpful to feed our minds about what opportunities there are with this type of technology within the broader domain of finance, within Treasury, AR, and AP. And then on the data and AI side, how we can optimize the benefits, we will spend more time than just talking about you have to have good data for your machines to learn on and do well with it because it's extrapolating, it's performing functions on that, it's vectoring off of that, it's looking at how, if you're teaching it, you want to teach it with good data, but we'll look at more than that, but the learning elements and focus on that for how we can optimize those benefits in our organizations, in finance, in Treasury, and other areas. Then finally, we'll do a couple key takeaways. We have 3 that we'll step through at the end. So we've got a lot to cover, and we'll get started. I'll kick us off with from the functional to the strategic. And this is overplayed a little bit, so please accept that, right? Yesterday's Treasurer wasn't only operationally focused. There certainly was a strategic element to it, but thinking through from and to where the opportunities are to be more strategic makes sense. There is always a key element of operationally focused, making sure payments are made, cash is where it needs to be. And yesterday's Treasurer certainly has lived in the environment of a lot of manual tools, the world of Excel. It becomes more of a isolated role, or has been more of an isolated role for many, where the Treasurer acts more as a vendor as opposed to a strategic business partner. And part of that is, part of the challenge of that world was it was a little bit more reactive with compliance, a little more reactive with services that are needed, making sure that they have a seat at the table was a little bit harder for all of the business areas. And so that's a little bit of the negative side of the past. As we look to today's Treasurer, the opportunity to leverage AI and support how a Treasurer is a strategic business partner, certainly an adult in the room, helping to guide the business, manage risk, make good, well-reasoned decisions for the business. It can provide more opportunities for a more proactive risk management approach, identifying the risks, calibrating those risks, then acting on those. And we put AI-driven, API-driven. We could put the use of business intelligence tools driven, everything that has the letter I in it, that the organization will be faster, more nimble, able to respond, perform better analysis. And that requires a faster treasury, sometimes a more immediate treasury with payments or information. And while not everything needs to be instantaneous, it's definitely getting faster. It's not staying the same. And certain elements, there are bigger benefits to a cleaner, more scalable, more rapid approach. And so those are some of the elements of more, functional and operational to far more strategic and decisive. Those are a couple of the key things that I just want to keep in mind as we look at Treasury's role continues to expand, and the emphasis needs to be there from, the financial crisis to COVID. There's all these pressure points that demand more of Treasury, finance, and by descent from that, better use of technology. And so Yogs is going to take us through some of the definitions of some of the key terms with AI and the landscape here.
Thank you, Greg. And I'm definitely sure that many of you already are aware, are using many of these technologies, so machine learning, generative AI, or agentic AI. So I thought I will, for those who probably do not know or not close, I will just share some examples. When you think about machine learning, it is statistical model that is combined with little more machine learning techniques, but specifically applied to your internal historical data to be able to predict what is going to happen in the future. So in the world of Treasury, forecast cash flow based on historical performance and trend is a great example. So it is very confined. It operates within your own domain, and then you are using the machine learning technique to predict what is going to come. But then came the generative AI, and this is the podcast that Craig did before. It is all about the data is already out there in the internet. Using that, now the model advanced to a place where it not only uses that information, but can also create new content, whether it is creating new code, images, or even creating new patterns, etc. So the model is evolving every day. I'm pretty sure many of you are already using ChatGPT, or you are using Gemini and various other things. But now they are getting embedded into various applications. In Treasury world, you could think of it as if you are creating liquidity reporting or board update, you no longer have to do the guts of every page and formatting and everything. You can actually hand it over to a generative AI tool. Now, even if you are using PowerPoint that is embedded with generative AI copilots. So you can continue to see how you minimize your repeatable tasks because the generative AI can do a lot of heavy lifting for you. But I think the new one that is emerging really fast is agentic AI. And there is also, you will probably hear AI agents and agentic AI in your normal conversation. So I thought I'll differentiate that as well. AI agents are nothing but the robotic process automation type things. It is reactive. You define certain tasks and it can do it for you. But they don't take action on them by themselves. So the good example in Treasury world is FX rate monitoring. So based on the FX rate that changes, you want some alert to be produced. It's more like automation, but you are applying some AI in that context. But agentic AI is completely revolutionary. Using the generative AI advancement, agentic AI came to a place where it can be autonomous. Think of it like the treasury management, detection managing, or dispute handling. In the previous world without AI, you will be writing reams and reams of business rules and exception rules and everything. Now you can think of it like you can instruct proactively what needs to happen, and agentic AI has the capability to apply that and run it as well. So the easy way for you to think about is what part of your function you can offload it to an AI and make that AI act as mini you in your work. That's how I want you to think about agentic AI as well. So it's evolving very rapidly. We will talk more with some examples along the way too, but I thought it'll be a good place to orient ourselves on the evolution and the changes of agentic AI.
Yeah, thanks, Yogs. That was very helpful. So how can AI help? Where can it play a role? And so there's a bit of a bleed over between these two areas because people are combining agentic AI with pattern detection and generative AI. But let's just go through some of the common processes for machine learning. We have forecasting models. Why are those common processes? Well, there's data that shows what's occurred in the past, same as last year, plus 2%, and there's different changes. We have models of regression where we're trying to find the fitness of a curve among lots of data points, right? We've used regression for many, many years.
Right.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Finish your question.
Yeah, and then fraud prevention controls. The anomalies help, and items that are not standard can be captured, where the system learns what's normal and something hasn't happened. Or you can also program certain things in, like you make a change in a payee, and that gets and then a payment's immediately sent out. So you can add your own, you can teach it directly, or you can help train it on the data and the patterns that exist. And so some of those are the possibilities with AI for machine learning.
You are exactly right, Greg. The way to think about this is agentic AI or generative AI is not to come and replace what you are already doing with machine learning, but it is actually to enhance the value of what machine learning was already delivering to you. So the way I would think about this is, let's just say you had a fraud detection model, but you want to correlate that fraud detection model with some external signals. Whether a fraud rate increases when, let's just say, there is a recession signal outside. So now generative AI can bring those recession signals and help you interpret your fraud patterns differently as well. Earlier, you must have worked on creating those external signals, bring that as a data set inside your models, all of those things. But now in generative AI, there is this concept called RAG, retrieval augmented generation, which can allow you to take your data, combine that with public data without exposing your data, and it allows you to interpret the information that you are already producing with machine learning differently. But then from there, if you go to agentic AI, I think the good example could be if you want to invoke adjustment strategy based on FX change. If there is a rate of FX that you want to set and then call your hedging strategy, now you don't have to do heavy programming. You can define an agent that constantly watches for external FX rate change and automatically start to invoke and execute your hedging strategy and changing forward contracts and all of those things as well. So as you can see, they can play very nicely with each other as long as you create the technology ecosystem that defines the boundary between your internal data versus external data. Then how do you bring them together while you're complying with your own privacy rules and everything? So it is getting really excited. I think it is the imagination of what we want the technology to do that is going to be the key differentiation on how we can benefit from this in the domain of Treasury.
That's really good. I appreciate the additional acronym RAG that I'll try to fit into my conversations now. If we jump over to the agentic AI, the agent driven AI, the smarter workflows, you know, the common historical processes were like robotic process automation. And Yogs, I'd love for your comments on that. You did talk a little bit about that. So robotic process automation is very programmed. You say, go to this site, do this function or this function. You plug in all of the actions, whereas agentic AI may have those, it'll have more decision trees that it can build and use. And if it needs to get the human, it can bring the human in to say, give me some guidance here. I haven't figured this one out, right? Let's say for reconciliation, right?
Right.
It would allow those functions. How would you correct that or expand on that?
So I will give two examples to pull the concepts you shared all the way through. So when you think about agentic AI, and let's just say you have a cash application and there is an exception process and there is an invoice that is always late from a particular supplier, one of the ways that you can use agentic AI is you just tell the agent that you make decision. You don't have to define the rules. You can say you make decisions on out of pattern invoices. Whether it is delayed, then do you want to automatically trigger an email back to the supplier? Or proactively, even you start to communicate with the supplier, knowing the supplier's payment is going to be delayed type of thing. That's agentic AI. You are not writing the rule. You can define prompts that tells the intent of what you want the agent to do. But then you can also define in the agents, there are concepts called short-term and long-term memory. So you can define what do you want the agent to remember across multiple cases that you're handling. And also when you want the agent to wait for a human to give an approval. For example, an invoice that is less than $500, let's just say that needs to go to collections. You can say anything below 500, you don't have to wait for somebody's approval. And you are not writing a rule again. You are just saying my threshold is 500. And in those areas, you can take the action without waiting for anyone. That's a prompt. You are writing in plain English. Then it starts to learn and starts to apply that. Where it gets very interesting in agentic world is now Google also launched this concept called agent to agent protocol. So now if your supplier also has their own agent, even proactively, your agent can communicate with supplier's agent and say, hey, you consistently have been late in paying your invoice. This time, make sure that you initiate the payment 15 days before. So that is how I want us to start thinking about. It's an agent is a mini version of you or your function. Then if your supplier and the partner in your ecosystem also has an agent, how would you want the agents to agent communicate? That's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'll give you an example, not necessarily, well, I guess it's sort of like this. People have protections on their websites to prevent denial of service attacks and other activity. And so if it detects something that seems like it's coming from a machine, it would block it.
Correct.
And people also set up their machines to check links in emails to make sure that it wasn't, nefarious or had a bad payload. And so when that first started happening, all of a sudden our emails stopped getting read as much because our machines were blocking their machines from doing their function, because quickly it was like, hey, that's a machine. This is no good. And then they corrected that. So, but very quickly, within several days, the agent to agent or robot to robot items got fixed and moved on.
You are exactly right. And most fraud rules, as far as I know in the industry that I am in, most fraud rules already can recognize a bot traffic coming in, all of those things. Now they have to evolve to recognizing a simple bot that is trying to attack from fraud perspective versus an agent really trying to communicate with you. So recently, both MasterCard and Visa enable their agentic protocols for payment facilitation. They are both introduced their own tokenization approach to recognize this as agent versus a bot. But I'm hopeful that eventually industry evolves to follow one standard practice. on how to recognize an agent and how do you authorize that agent, but a lot of technological evolution that's happening in the domain as well.
Great. I know there's more on this slide. Everybody will get a copy of the slides after the webinar, so I won't go through all of those just from a time perspective, but I will advance us to our first poll question. So this is poll question number 1. There's one. If you can't read it, look in the chat box. You can see how to find it. So it's implementing AI. When do you expect to implement AI in Treasury operations? One answer only. Already using, within a year, 1 to 2 years, 3+ years, no plans, still exploring options, and unsure. So we will, if you would hit submit after you do that, that would be excellent. I would point people to the chat box to follow Deluxe on LinkedIn and to follow Strategic Treasurer on LinkedIn. I say those and people rarely follow it, and that's okay. But if you would, make sure you're following these companies. That would be awesome. Make me happy. Make our marketing teams delighted, surprised and delighted. That would be good. So here are the, wow, that's pretty even, except the 3+ years. No plans, still exploring and unsure, make up 46%. And we've got 51% within 2, already using or within 2 years. So a doubling within a year, usage doubling within a year. I don't know if that sounds like a lot to people, but that is very significant adoption rate doubling within a year. I think it might be higher than that too, because a lot of AI is coming through the vendor's products, through the bank products. So the AI capability is there. You can use it if you're on LinkedIn. You're like, oh, I can compose a response letter by using AI. All of a sudden it's there and you can use it. Pretty interesting to see where this sits. All right, I'll go ahead and close that. If you are interested in seeing the results of the poll questions, you can type in either DLX for Deluxe or RAG in the chat box. We'll count both of those. Brian will keep track of that. I think he's keeping track of those by adding things up, not by using agentic AI. But maybe that will change. We'll have a tool that does that. All right. Yogs has a lot of content to share here. And so these are use cases. I'll ask some questions. Maybe I'll kick us off, Yogs. Documents are a challenge, right? They can be everything from invoices that need to be checked to items and information compared for reconciliation, to agreements, loan agreements, contracts. There's a lot of work, and we can't always have interns do it. They take a long time. They don't do it as accurately, but there's a need here. Maybe you could talk us through this use case.
So I think Treasury is a fantastic place to have all sort of complexities with the documents that we can imagine, because still 40% of the B2B businesses use checks, and that involves a lot of documentation for checks and invoices and additional coupons that you send it through. And then you also have ACH file formats and how different companies send your ERP system file formats and everything else. I think AI is a very good place. I saw a lot of you are thinking of using AI, and we use AI heavily in the document extraction process, which is the starting point of whether you are doing archive process or integrated receivables or cash application and exception management. So Greg, to your point, even advanced AI with most advanced public companies, they do relatively okay job when it comes to extracting and dealing with treasury management documents. Think of checks and coupons that go with the check, then the check payment instruments that goes with it, and things like that. But then there are some specialized additional work that we have done that moved originally using AI for document extraction and treasury management, it gave us probably 65%. Now we are well over 90 to 95% because the work like finding reconciliation, association, and everything, humans, that's probably the best place to apply AI, right? Because your human should be moving upwards. In the first slide, you talked about how do you become more strategic advisor from operationally focused. I would say start in this area because you probably will not have a lot of compliance challenges. Of course, you have to have human in the loop. If the AI interpreted the document incorrectly, then how do you catch that and all of those things? But you are able to even instruct AI on what you want the human to look at that as well. So I would say this is a very good place to apply AI, and we applied, and we are starting to see really significant uplift in this area.
Excellent. That's a great use case. The next one is about customer service use case. All of us have gone online to try to connect with somebody. You call and they say, go to the website, it'll be quicker. Sometimes we go there because we know if we answer prompts quickly, we can get to a real person more rapidly. But customer service tools have gotten a lot better. They've been able to answer more questions more intelligently. Sometimes I think that the benefits, the cost of delivering, it's about 1/50th. That's what we're seeing in the industry, with at least as much of a good return, especially if you have humans in the loop. Can you talk us through this one?
So this is a good use case, right? So when you go and do chat-based or bot-based interaction, this is not new in customer service, right? Where many companies have been trying to make their chat channel a lot more effective. So you minimize the number of people having to come to the customer service conversations, etc. I'm personally seeing generative AI bringing a lot of effectiveness in this particular area because it can bring more reasoning and thinking. So when humans interact with the chat bot now, it feels a lot more like you are interacting with a human, right? It's not a canned answer to the question that you asked. It's not going and picking some answer. And sometimes it also lead to more frustration for the end customers. If you're asking some question, it doesn't get it, and it puts you in a loop. And then you're like, can you please hand me over to a human? So now generative AI is really getting better at how to respond, even how to reflect some empathy in the conversation, all of those things. But at the same time, you can also, the idea of implementation should not be, how do you make this sound like human? Because the human still wants to know you are talking to a machine. So while you implement customer service related generative AI, the things that we want to keep in mind and what we are keeping in mind is, how do you still make sure that the customer understands it's not human, it is a machine that is giving you the answer? And also, how do you bring more human judgment element into the decision making too? I don't know how many of you know this. Air Canada, as soon as generative AI came about early 2023, they introduced a chatbot, and they had an incident where it handled the customer resolution incorrectly that went to all the way to the lawsuit, and it became very ugly very quickly. So finding what are the levels of risk that you are willing to take in offering that information through the customer service is a good criteria to keep in mind. And the last one, when you're using generative AI, is hallucination, because it can very easily get into a rabbit hole of misinterpretation of the context. But once you apply those criteria, but generally companies that are using generative AI for customer service are getting a lot of good momentum. And we, within Deluxe, launched what we call Deluxe Assist, DAX, for lack of creativity. And DAX basically is a backbone engine, and we are specifically then making it work for whether it is Deluxe Payment Exchange, question and answer, or even merchant services and things like that. So we are going relatively carefully and slow when it comes to customer-facing use cases, for exact same reason that we want to learn how the model is responding. So in the back end, we implemented very deep insights that the chatbot provides from category standpoint, what kind of questions came through and what the chatbot could not answer, etc. So we continue to have the humans watching and improving the way that we deliver to. So to your point, it is a very good cost optimization opportunity, as long as you balance the customer experience angle really well as well.
Right. Now, this next one is addressing multiple use cases or emerging use cases. A couple of them might be with relation to cash application applying invoices to customers or to customers' particular outstanding invoices, predictive analytics. I know we already talked about customer service, so maybe you can talk through these emerging use cases.
Yeah, so specifically in treasury management, cash application across multiple payment channels that you have, and how do you associate invoice to the payment channel, and going all the way from detections, exceptions handling, all of those things. It's a very good place to apply almost all of the three categories that we talked about. You potentially start with machine learning that does more deterministic matching on, is it the same invoice? Is it for the same customer? And how do you roll all of that up together? But then when you are interpreting what caused the exception, is it an out of pattern? And giving some annotation for some of those examples is a great place for generative AI to play in. You don't need some human now figuring out, oh, model is showing some exception here, but what happened? So now generative AI actually can start to add some annotation on those exceptions, so the human's job becomes a lot simpler. But agentic AI, it's still in experimentation, even on our side. But where it gets exciting is what I was telling before. Are you able to start to have the agent interpret what is happening in the cash application, then start to set some thresholds that it can actually start to trigger an email by itself, or if somebody even responds to that email, how do you take that input in? Because now we are going through even email-based invoicing that came, and how do you bring that into simple cash application use cases too? And also, I think the another area that we are exploring chat application, agentic application, is making it more 24/7 customer support, right? So the system becomes not responsive or any of those things. How do you bring in self-healing into the systems as well? So you are minimizing the humans watching the systems as we go through these use cases as well. So the goal is, how do you bring more efficiency? Then how do you bridge into the future of creating agent that becomes mini financial analyst or a mini exception handler, mini QA person, and slowly build the confidence of the humans using those capabilities as we evolve the systems as well. So it certainly will be a competitive advantage. A lot of the companies are experimenting in this area, and we are actively working to solve eventually what an agentic experience could look like, even from our system to even the supplier systems, and how do you make it more safer too. So partly where we are gaining confidence in agentic AI, that is what we are planning to add into our prediction systems. But we are thinking of, I mean, many of you would have seen, if you are using Outlook or any other application, they all come up with this toggle mode that says, oh, do you want to explore beta version of the Outlook? Or do you want to stay on the reliable version of the Outlook? I think that's a good technique for us as we think about agentic AI too. You let the user decide whether you want to toggle to agentic experience, or you want to safely continue to work on the experience that you trust and depend today. So that's how we are thinking as we evolve into all of these use cases as well.
Yeah, because I would think we'd also want the AI to compare, while we're running something parallel, compare the AI model with the historical model, see how it's performing, and then go like, okay, it's 30% better. I'm ready to cut over.
Right. I think that's a reasonable use case to take it and explore as well.
All right. So we're at the second poll question. We need 34 more DLX or RAGs in there. DLX stands for Deluxe. And the question is, it's an all that applies. Which treasury processes are you most interested in enhancing with AI? If you're a banker, which ones do you think your customers are most interested in? So the options are cash forecasting, reconciliation and matching, working capital management, customer service automation, AP or AR, other, or unsure. So we'll let everybody respond to those. And while they're doing that, Yogs, if you could look at the Q&A, we have a couple of Q&A questions. One is, how can a company implement AI technology while safeguarding sensitive data and maintaining privacy standards? That's the RAG answer that you gave. So thanks for doing that. There's probably more that we could talk about there. But the second question is, if I understand correctly, agentic AI can understand plain language rather than needing coding and formula, so the natural language process. Any comments on that?
Yes. So even for the first question that you asked about how do you safeguard your data, the technology around agentic AI and even generative AI is evolving super rapidly. So it requires your internal teams to really get deeper to understand it. The good news is not all the companies have to invest a lot of dollars in creating these technologies. Most companies are making these technologies freely available. So the way retrieval augmented generation, the RAG that works, as I said, is think of it more like a protective but transparent wall between your company's data and the public large language model. Because many times the public large language model is a final product that you can go download it from Hugging Face, which is a web front end that gives all the available models if it is open source. Or if you already are on a public cloud like AWS or Azure, you can have access to many of these models as well. So the idea is, how do you bring these models and you have a RAG filter, which is something you have to implement inside your company. Then think of it this way, that your company's data gets translated into a simple natural language query. And that is what the RAG process is. Then it goes into public LLM. So you're not sending your real data. Your real data-driven prompt is what goes to the RAG. So the techniques are well proven and evolving, but you need to create a basic architecture inside your company. And I'm hoping all of you probably interact with your technology organizations and how they implement this too. But our experience, it doesn't have to be very expensive because there are a lot of open source technology that is available for you to implement. But you have to proactively do it. But specifically on the agentic one, Greg, that area is still evolving. Honestly, I would say even we are not very clear on what a beginning and end of an agent. Because you can think of an agent more like a robot that can actually do everything a human does. But that's not the idea. The idea is what is manageable function that you can give to an agent, but then how do you make multiple agents jointly deliver an outcome for you? So cash application is a good example where you have a lot of work that you have to do, right? Even if a machine does a lot of work and you log into the system and you see, so building those agents, again, you have multiple choices to pick from. There is Crew AI, which is an open source agentic framework if you want to use, or there is LangChain. So a lot of technology providers that are making these things open and freely available. The best bet is also any public provider you are using, they all make it available too. So my recommendation would be either you are, I think it starts with having a conversation with your technology organization to say, hey, how are you thinking of implementing agentic AI? And how can I help? Because the use cases will have to come from business partners such as this group. The way I simplify for my stakeholders inside Deluxe is the questions that you are asking today does not have to change. But we need to reimagine how do you get to the answer with the AI. And that's where I think protecting your data, it's all proven already, you can do it. But then what do you want to convert as agents and what you don't want to convert as agent as well?
All right. Yeah, thanks for that that explanation. So I'll just move off the polls and quizzes. You can see the responses there in the window. The top one is cash forecasting. Number 2 is reconciliation matching. Going to get down to APAR, working capital management, customer service. Now let's move to their next use case. Reconciliation is a big deal. There's so much reconciliation that goes on. That could be bank account reconciliation with a subledger like AR, posting. There's Treasury proof, which is the daily activity. Can you give us a quick summary of this one?
Yes. So you all know in the treasury management, the number of files and formats and data types that we have to deal with. So even before getting real-time matching and connecting to various payment systems and invoicing, the core capabilities is how do you apply AI to even standardize the type of data formats that you have to work with? Because once you do that heavy lifting, a lot of this becomes a lot easier. So we will talk about that towards the end as well. But I just wanted to remind everybody that if you are trying to deal with very complex data set, it's a good reminder to also go back and look at how AI can help you to standardize as well, especially generative AI. It's as good as handling unstructured data, not just the structured data as well. But then the opportunity that we have is many of the companies are starting to introduce what is called MCP service, model context protocol. So even SAP, I believe, recently started the model context protocol. So when you think about real-time matching, think of it more like if you do it offline, you can very easily get access to publicly available large language models and drive those mapping too. But for you to do real time, now we are starting to explore beyond APIs, which companies are enabling this MCP services, model context protocol, that then allows you to speak to those systems in a natural language. So the difference between API and MCP is API needs well-structured data to communicate. Mostly they are JSON or XML, not getting too much technical here, but that structuring is no longer required if both sides, your side and your provider side, have MCP protocol. That's evolving really quickly. But from reconciliation standpoint, the first is how do you match the entity to entity, whether it is invoice to customer, or customer to the payment and payment rails that you are collecting it to. So there is a lot of good machine learning application there. It doesn't have to be more advanced than that. But then in terms of scaling all these opportunities, if you are already on public cloud, which we are, then public cloud gives you a lot of choices to continue to optimize it too. But from the end customer standpoint, what we need clarity on is, I don't care what model you applied, how you executed. Can you give me audit trail? So I can trust the outcome that machine learning is producing is something that I can approve of. So that's what, as a business partner, I would ask you to ask for. What are your expectations from the model standpoint? Is it explainability, audit trail, any exceptions that it made its own decisions, which is what we are focused on creating as well. So that's what I would suggest. So it's a complex area. AI's invention is helping us a lot. But as you continue to learn the technology, what is the basic that you want to expect so you don't have to constantly question whether the model solve the problem or match the right things to your satisfaction.
Yeah. Does it answer your questions, and can you question the answers or interrogate the answers to see how it came to them? Yeah. All right, so as we round the corner and we accelerate slightly towards the end, we've got this linear flow on the screen of AI-enhanced payment flow. And we tend to view payments and processes as very linear, one step then the next. This one shows a little bit of a combination where AI influences multiple areas at the same time. Can you take us through that, Yogs?
Yes. I think I read recently in the Global Treasurer or some other source that 90% of the business leaders are planning to apply AI in the next 2 to 3 years. But the poll that we saw here validated that as well. It's happening pretty rapidly, and how you are applying AI in this treasury management solution. So what we laid out here is when you look at payment files, invoice files, and remittances, I'm pretty sure you all are thinking, okay, it's all fragmented, manual effort, reassociating files, a lot of legacy systems, and getting the data out of those legacy systems, exception handling, and how much of this actually we can do straight through processing. So along the way, I was explaining to all of you. So when we think about customer resolution or even invoice resolution, the way we used machine learning is we thought of it as entity. Whether it is a customer, that's an entity. If it is an invoice, that's an entity. If it is a file, payment rails, that is an entity. End of the day, what you are defining inside machine learning algorithm is, can I match one side of the entity with another? This is the same invoice to this customer. But then what are the partial information that I have across my data set, past and present? Then can I apply AI to make the best guess to fill the missing information? Because that's the only way you are going to come to certainty on, is this the invoice for the same customer or not? So that's basically how we have been applying. We call it entity resolution, which then makes it a lot more generic with all these complexities that we have to deal with. And that's how we approached customer resolution. And on top of that, we are doing invoice matching and other things. But the way we are doing that is, the AI is now context aware. So the minute it recognizes this is invoice entity, not a customer entity, then it will start to adjust what is the partial information that is missing that I can pre-populate. So example, on a customer name and demographic, if a line starts with a number and then an English word, it can guess that it is an address. Then the model is trained already to say, what are the possible things in an address? If you say 2248 West Arrow Lane, and in one address lane is missing and another one arrow is missing, but then the model can easily guess that it is 2249 West Arrow Lane, because it is in the context of a customer resolution, and demographic is what I'm guessing. But if I apply the same machine learning model in an invoice matching, then depending on which line it is reading, then it has to make what that missing element is. So that is how the model continues to evolve. But overall, by applying this approach, we, as I said, we used to be getting 65% straight through processing. And now we are getting about 90 to 95% accuracy in how we are matching and resolving these files.
Excellent. Our third and final poll question is up. What are your biggest barriers to adopting AI in Treasury? So this is a multiple choice. Select all that apply. Go ahead and hit submit. And we will go from there. Give everybody just a moment to do that. I'm going to pop up the next slide. And I don't know if there's a highlight you want on this. I think maybe just for time's sake, Yogs will go to the, we have 3 more slides to do besides this one. I think what we'll do is we'll move on to the data capture at scale, just to make sure we can get done on time. it's a good use case. Maybe we'll cover that the next one. We got through a lot of really, really good use cases. So thanks everybody for stepping through that. Yogs, really good practical information. So if everybody would submit their questions on the biggest barriers to adoption, and we have enough people typing in Deluxe, we're well over 100, which is awesome. And so on this data capture at scale, one of the things that we see here is on the bottom, we have this flow, document intake, all the way to integrations, and there's the phrase human in the loop. At the top, we have information and payments coming in from all kinds of different areas. Give us the quick executive summary on this.
I think simply what it says is, even though many of you might have heard this acronym OCR, Object Capture Solution, that the quality and the accuracy of the solution is still evolving. There are small startup companies that are coming up with good solutions too. So what we are talking about here is based on the type of the solution, we continue to apply multiple different models, even OCR models. And the underneath what we have in our solution is varying degrees of OCRs that has the accuracy for certain type of files. But finally, it goes through the same process flow, document intake to classification and extraction. But the outcome accuracy is not all that, oh, there is one model that is figuring out all of those things. So we fine-tuned different models that is able to recognize invoice and OCR. But the way we invoke from the overall cash application process perspective, it's all one entry into the OCR and then one outcome that comes out as well. So that's how we abstracted it, because today one model can produce accuracy, tomorrow different model is going to come up with a different accuracy. We are able to just replace the models and come into. So the only outcome from executive summary standpoint for you guys is you don't have to be a model expert anymore going forward, because in machine learning world, we need to have data scientists and machine learning experts internally, which you still need to continue to keep. But when it comes to large language model, the big companies like OpenAI and Claude and Gemini, they are continuing to evolve. So our job is how do I plug in those models as and when I validate the accuracy. So my program's efficiency continues to go up as well. So that's what the takeaway I would like it to be from this page. But there was also a question, Greg, in the chat that when you do cash forecasting, each trend line, depending on the industry, could be different. How do you train a machine learning model, I mean AI, to be able to interpret that very well as well? So I just wanted to give a response to that. Think of the large language model as a professor who is very good in every subject, whether it is math, economics, physics, science, everything. In real world, you may not see it. But then what you have to do is you have to tell the large language model, I want you to act as a math professor. Or you can say, I want you to act as math and science professor. So in that context, the same way you have to tell your company and which industry it belongs to. Then it only focuses on that industry specific patterns. Then you combine that with your RAG concept that I explained. So it can actually marry your internal company's trend line with the industry specific trend line that it has access to from outside perspective as well. So that's why when you write a prompt, you're always first telling the large language model, what do you want it to act as? What is the context? And then you specify your question, you will get more precise answer.
So this question is also set up for the next slide. If you look at this slide here, there's across the bottom, there's the document intake, pre-process, all of these items that are more linear. Many of today's processes are set up as linear. And as we draw things out and we look at how some of these tools, whether it's AI-driven tools that are looking across the process, are we moving, or should we be moving from the linear step-by-step process to more of a network solution? And so that's the general question. And then here's your structured view about a modern approach to a complex problem. Maybe you could take us through that and answer that question all in 2 minutes.
I think that's a really great question and tee up into this page as well. So when we try to create core modern platform that we created inside the company, we basically came up with three building blocks, and that is what you are flowing through here. We inside the company call it as Deluxe.data, Deluxe.ai, and Deluxe.connect. Here, what you see is there is a data connector, then integration layer that can take multiple file formats and APIs and all of those things. Then you have AI capability that can continue to create cash flow models and new order to cash workflows, and it feeds back into customer systems too. So to Greg's comment, you no longer have to define these things in a linear fashion because your programs and machine learning and AI capabilities are very well designed to do multitasking at the same time. So reimagining your internal systems actually in a more parallelized way allows you to get more outcome out of it too. So in our design, every time new file format comes in, we don't have to keep changing the base system. It can adapt to itself and then delivers consistent experiences. Where we are confined to is what humans actually can take. So how do we continue to deliver in the format that humans are familiar? So as we all learn to deal with more dynamic formats, then the system can evolve that way too. I also imagine a day where you probably don't need a website or a mobile app interface to talk to your cash application system. You can probably send a voice message and it gets you the information that you want. And I think that's where the technology is evolving. But the final result will be how quickly we are learning and evolving to change the way we used to interacting with the machines. And this layer foundation is meant to create that way. So we are eventually able to evolve to what our end customers want.
Excellent. And so as we go to final thoughts, if people want to type a note in the chat box, this is just a query. How many would be interested in like 3 hours or 4 hours of stepping through AI processes, how that works in some depth? Type in AI workshop in there if that would be something you would be interested in. That's just to gauge. There's no promise of anything. All right, so we're in final thoughts. Why don't you start us off, Yogs, and I'll finish up with the last one.
Fantastic. I think if we summarize everything that we have been talking about, AI evolved to a place where agentic AI now can go beyond automation of tasks that you wanted to start taking decisions for you. The example that we started with is if there is an FX change, can you start to create forward hedging strategy and you automatically execute that as well. So I would highly encourage all of you to start to reimagine what that could look like, whether you are implementing it today or not, but at least start to imagine. We want to re-practice our brains in a way that we are reimagining our current solutions. So that is basically how engaging automation and AI looks like. But in order for you to do that, you got to do some cleanup in your data. As I said, both structured and unstructured data, AI can do a pretty good job. So those are my two takeaways to say that reimagine what problems you are solving and how you want to solve it with AI. But don't forget the data privacy and all of the basic things that you have to do. And again, AI can help you there as well.
Yeah, and then the last title section there is Insights Become Actions. This allows us to plow through data to get indicators that either are actioned on by the AI or allows us to make better decisions. And it's not just an element by itself. There's handoffs across processes, workflows, as well as this network type view. And so this helps move us more on the proactive side. As we looked at the beginning, what is the treasure going from and to? This helps support that. So Yogs, thank you so much. Everyone, thank you. I'll turn it over to Brian for a couple really quick announcements.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. The CTP and FP&A credits, today's webinar slides, and a recording of today's webinar will be sent to you within 5 business days. And be sure to download the AP Automation Readiness Survey Report by clicking the link in the chat box. Thank you, and we hope you have a good rest of the day.